Hello everyone, I wanted to briefly go over a few examples from the week 5 folders before you delve into the concepts of week 6. So inside of our week 5, we focus a bit on the static members of a class, and a static member essentially is a member that belongs to the class as a whole, rather than to particular instances of the class. So to illustrate this, inside of our item.java file, there is at line 9 a value called total value that is set to a static variable, static double. And what this means is that every item that you create is going to have this same private static double value that is shared between them. To actually illustrate this out, when you run this file that is outdoorstore.java, you'll see at line 6 you create a default object. There's going to be no prices and no items in the stock. So when we check the default stocks, or the default stock, it's going to say 0. At line 9, we go ahead and we create a first one object. And you can see here that we create this object called carabiner. We have them at $9 each, and it's 100. So this would be 9 times 100, which is $900. And now if we go ahead and we sell 10 of them, we'll see that if we check the item again, we have a reduced stock to 90, and then our price is still $9 for each of the items. So now we have 810 items in the store. Now again, this is straightforward enough from what we've seen with the bank account Java file. But where this gets interesting is trying to illustrate this concept of the static value. So at line 17, when we create the second one object, we have a new item called the rope, and each of these are selling for $175. We have 5 of them in total. So essentially what happens here is that we'll get 175 times 5 if we go ahead and we try to report the value. But you'll notice something interesting here is that the total value in the warehouse is $1,685. And why is this happening? Well, if we go ahead and we try to open up our calculator here, we'll notice that if we do 175 times 5, we have $875 worth of the warehouse of the item of rope. But what do we remember about the static variable is that they're shared between the classes. So if we go ahead and we remember what we used to have in the warehouse, it was 810. So if we add 810 to 875, we'll get to 1,685. So essentially, even though that these are different objects, first one and second one are different objects of our item class, the item class has this static value of total value that's shared between them, which essentially allows us to increase the overall amount. Now, this is very useful if you have some attributes like amount of students, amount of accounts, total playtime, or whatever it is as well, that you could share between all these accounts. And what you could do there with total playtime is essentially calculate, add in to the, do something similar to the constructor here, where every time you create a new playtime or whatever, you can add it to there. So essentially, this is what these static values are inside of Java, and they're very useful to make a bit more of a intensive or more efficient way to define variables that we need to use in our objects. The second part of this is just this rational number class in week 5, and again, this one, of course, goes ahead and shows off a few implementations. And where you can see this is inside of the rational and rational driver. So go ahead and take a look at these as well for rational driver. But if you go ahead and try to run this code here, you'll notice we'll get a few rational numbers. And a very important thing that I want everyone to see here is in these lines here are the first and second numbers the same object. And essentially what we get here is that they aren't the same object because we have the equals overridden. But what we do have here, where we have our are they the same values, you can see that the equal sign checks for the object equality, so it checks for the memory address, which is why we're getting no right here, because they're technically not in the same memory address. But the first dot equals second, that is a yes, because they hold the same values there. So again, inside of your week 5 folder, there's this rational driver. Just make sure that you kind of grasp this concept of the difference between equals and then the dot equals. But again, a main focus of this class from last time was just focusing on that static function and making sure you know how to implement it in your class. And the way that you can do that is by simply adding in the keyword static before any variable declaration that you would like to use. Again, if I got rid of the static keyword, what would happen, I would need to change around a little bit, but essentially this would just be individual for each class, and we would get different functionality for it.